first try. Take yourself all the way back to 2002 for a minute. Now I can still remember the surprise and joy that I had as a child when I opened this gift, because I had no idea that there was a Dragon Ball Z game for the PS2, so as you could imagine, I was ecstatic. So I'll be evaluating the following: the visuals, the story mode, the fighting system, any extras, and then just some final thoughts. So as for the visuals, what can I say? Incredibly appealing. It did away with the sprites of Ultimate Battle 22 and the shitty 3D of Final Bout. So what we had was a smooth, faithful rendering of everything necessary to portray on screen, right from the character models even to the backgrounds. And it didn't even use cel shading graphics to do this. The characters emote and act cartoony as they're expected to, and the stages are magnificent for an early PS2 fighter. However, one thing that I do criticize was that the shadows were just circles underneath the character. It's not an actual shadow of their defined body shape, so it was a little iffy in that respect, but it was fixed for the GameCube version. But otherwise, everything else looks and it feels crisp. One other very lacking aspect that I personally found was that the destroyed stage, when a super attack is used, was just a crater, so it looked very lackluster compared to what the game has showed us in the past. But indeed, it did make up for that with the destroyed Namek stage, because it has a few nice looking tornadoes and whatnot. The story mode is very straightforward. The narrator of the series explains the event of the end of Dragon Ball, wherein you're brought to the start of the Z arc. You're given a little exposition, and then required to fight the respective battle. This happens throughout the mode, so it makes for a very two-noted way of playing. Exposition, then fight. Exposition, fight, and more exposition and more fighting. The pattern's abundantly clear to see from early on, but it isn't actually boring because the cutscenes are lively enough to keep you interested, and this Budokai gets the most amount of praise for being the only one in the series to do it properly. To this day, I and many others hold Budokai 1 to have the highest quality cutscenes of any of the games produced for the PS2. It surpasses mid-2008's burst limit for the PS3 as well, and it carries the most satisfying amount of them too, which is something that late 2008's Infinite World seemed to fuck up quite severely. In short, the awe of nostalgia is enough to keep one engaged throughout the campaign and the grind of fighting your way throughout the game. This links neatly into the fighting system. Now here is where Budokai 1 seems to choke a little. Coming fresh off the arcade fighting era, not much was available to separate a Dragon Ball fighter from your usual fighter, such as Tekken and Street Fighter, besides the characters themselves and having their respective movesets, so the lightning fast pace of the series was nearly impossible to replicate. After playing Budokai 3, you would not ever want to revert back to this system. Believe me, I've tried and it's nothing short of hell trying to do. It's just frustrating and disappointing. Cancelling is always possible to do if you're the type of player who does that, but that doesn't save it from the fact that it needed some refining, and that's what happened later on, thank God. Customization. This was probably the first Dragon Ball game in the series to generally allow you to have some of this. After completing a fight in the story, you unlock capsules. If you win in World Tournament, you're rewarded with Zeni, which is money which you can use to buy capsules from the gaming shop. You can use these to equip your characters with specific moves and abilities. Some are generic ones that are available to all of them, such as Viral Heart Disease, and others are specifically tailored to one character, such as the Kamehameha or the Gallica. You can use this to tailor your character to your own method of fighting, so whether you base your style on key attacks, or if you're a melee maniac, or you wish to use certain abilities to give you an advantage in a fight, the skill system is where you can fine-tune all of this. One large gripe that I have for this is that you needed to prepare the skills for the character before you set up the fight at all, so before you got into the Versus or World Tournament mode of the screen. So if you wanted to make a quick change right before you engaged in the fight, which is something that a smart fighter might want to do, you have to go all the way back to that screen to set it up, save it, and then go back to the fighting screen. It's monotonous and not helped by the loading screen being unbearably long, but this was fixed quickly for Budokai 2 and 3 with a skills function on the character select screen. What about extras? Not much actually. There's a survival mode where you play as Hercule, Mr. Satan, throughout the Cell games from his perspective, and you take on the Z Warriors and later Cell single-handedly, but besides that, there's nothing. You had a choice of one audio track, so there was the curious situation of those in Europe being given the Japanese voiceovers, and North America receiving the Funimation dub voice actors. Not listening to the Japanese dub, and then suddenly being subjected to their voices could be quite a shock. I know it was for the people in the UK at the time. And a lot of people found that their sort of grunts and pseudo-shouting to be quite annoying with the high-pitched voices, but you adjust to it in time. In fact, most would prefer it over the original now, so I can't say that Europe was screwed by Namco in this instance. What will make me say that we were screwed, however, although on the box art for the European port. You have characters like Spopovich and Deborah and even Majin Buu on the front and back, yet the story doesn't go up to that point. It finishes at the Cell Saga, so that can easily be called false advertisement, which was a stupid move for the people in charge of the box art to make. However, regardless of those faults, Budokai was a large stride in the right direction for Dragon Ball Z. It was able to bring in fans, and it was friendly enough to explain the story to non-fans. But it was obvious that more could be incorporated. The move of only going up to the Cell Saga was forgivable here, and not so much in Burst Limit, because it was the first PS2 title to have a fleshed story for Dragon Ball Z. So if they screwed up the story on attempt number 1, and they did the whole span, it would have been a huge waste of production time and money. So you can forgive it in that sense. But that doesn't stop people wanting more. Is it a game that you absolutely must have? Well, it's on my shelf, and I haven't touched it since trying to do a review for this, so honestly, it isn't one worth seeing. If you want to see the cutscenes, find clips of them on the internet, but otherwise, in terms of a game that you want to pick up and play, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 1 certainly is not that. So, thank you for listening to this review. The next episode is going to be focusing on a tutorial, so it's going to be about producing an LSW sprite, and it's really about getting to grips with the basics. So look forward to that next week, and I hope that you enjoy it. This has been a DBZ Vortex podcast. Our community is based at www.dbzvortex.tk or forum.dbzvortex.tk. Head over there for a core Dragon Ball Z fanbase, fun people to talk to, and most of all, top-notch LSW sprites that nowhere else on the net has.